I've spent most days of my life, since I was a teenager at least, feeling like I was a dick. You know what we struggle with, us ADHD people, is being kind to ourselves and accepting ourselves. Probably until the age of about 30, I really struggled with it. In the last year and a bit, something changed. A, the diagnosis for ADHD. B, a recognition that if I was going to go through, hopefully I've got another 60 or so years on the planet. Do I really want to spend the next 60 years letting that same voice in my head control the narrative of my life? It does sound all a bit fucking Tony Robbins woo-woo. The thing is, right, it's very easy as a person with ADHD to let that voice take over and let that voice be the guiding kind of force in your life. And it means that you give into fear, you give into that sort of like restricted mindset, right? I can't do this, I don't want to do this, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to put myself out there, I don't want to look like a twat, all of that kind of stuff. The truth is, everyone in the world deals with that sort of thing, but because of the way our minds work for us people with ADHD, we can become very fixated on it, hyper focused on it, and it can become massively detrimental to our way of living. And because that voice in the head is being backed up by data, real-time data, like my brain says I'm a dick and then I fucking burn dinner or lose my keys or whatever. That's the difference, I think, between people with ADHD and not when it comes to that thing. Most people without ADHD, when their voice in the head tells them that they're a twat, they can point to a lot of things that shows them that they're not. But when a person with ADHD says, a voice in their head says that they're a twat, there's a lot of things that can show them that they are. As I say, in the last couple of years, I've managed to develop more of a acceptance of who I am. And it's hopefully there's a few things, I'll give you a few tips on it today that might help you do the same thing. Number 1, lean into your passions. So this is, I think, probably one of the most important aspects of being more accepting of who you are, I think, is focusing on your passions, because your passions are they're almost like a signal of who you actually really are deep down, like what you're actually about. You can go through life trying to fit into this box, and particularly when you've got ADHD, you want to try and be like normal, and you try and put yourself into these situations where you're more like everyone else. That can take you away from things that you're actually passionate about. And it might be that because when you were a kid, you were told that you shouldn't be passionate about these things, or, you weren't given the feedback that was okay to be passionate about that thing, or, real life's taken over. You've got a job, you've got kids, you've got whatever. And it's like, you can't spend your time on your passions, because your passions are stuff that don't make you money. I think you've got to carve out some time for your passions, regardless of your situation. Even if it's like 10 minutes a week, genuinely, I think it is better than nothing. It starts to make you feel more like you're in alignment with who you are, particularly with ADHD. I don't think it's about not liking yourself. I think it's about not liking who thing as in society. If it was a different situation, if we lived in a different type of society and you were completely free to just sort of be the sort of weird way that you are, I don't think you wouldn't like yourself. I think you probably would like yourself, but it's because the way that you are innately is sort of somewhat counter to the grain. After 10 years of doing that, or 20 years of doing that, you're like, I don't want to be that person, because that person's fucking boring. And that's where I got to for the last decade of my life. I was just like, I don't want to be this person, this really boring person. And I was just hating that I was having to be that person. So my recommendation is that you lean into this passion, you lean into your passions, because your passions guide you to who you actually are. If you're acting in a way that is more closely aligned to who you are innately, then I don't think you're going to not like yourself in that scenario. I think it's hard to not like what your soul or mind or whatever is sort of subconsciously telling you to do. Number 2, be kind to yourself and to others. As a famous bloke with a beard said, do unto others and blah, blah, blah. But it's also about you focusing on yourself, right? It's focusing on being kind to yourself as well. I think being kind is massively underrated in modern society, which makes me sound like an absolute twat. But I do think it is. I think it's underrated as a trait in modern society, because I think people value being hard-nosed and cunning and a bit of a bastard, and when it comes to business and stuff, certainly. And I think actually, certainly for the last 20, 30 years, being kind has been something that has been not frowned upon, but dismissed as being weak. Kindness and weakness has kind of gone hand in hand, and actually it's bollocks. What I would say is, when you're being kind to others, it's a lot easier to be kind to yourself, and vice versa. If your default setting is to criticize other people or jump on other people for fucking up or causing issues or doing something wrong or whatever, if your default response is to be like, oh, I don't know what that was, you get angry and you get wound up by them, then that's going to be your default response to yourself as well. That's not your default. That's not a default response that you can switch off when it comes to how you've been. Some people can, like there are people that can really manage to sort of self-delude themselves into thinking that they're somehow completely special and different from everyone else. But for the most people, particularly people with ADHD, I think if you're hard on other people, you're going to be hard on yourself. Put a barrier in for that and stop that happening. And I think the key way of doing that is essentially meditating, being mindful, focusing on your thoughts. When you hear words that you're saying to yourself of like, oh, you twat, or I should have done that, or why did you do that, or anything that's unkind, you can basically catch it. Number 3, don't try to be normal. This is probably one of the harder things to take on board. We're social animals. We have a proclivity, I think I've used that word before, built-in mechanism for wanting to fit in and be part of the tribe, right? And that's all well and good. That's absolutely fine. But the reality is that people with ADHD are not like the rest of the tribe. We are the hunters and they are the farmers, I think. Is it that way around? Or the gatherers, I suppose, back in the caveman day. So basically, we are not like the rest of the tribe. And I'm not saying we're better. I'm not saying we're more special. I am saying that a bit. But what I am saying is that we're different. So if you try and be normal and fit yourself into this box of like normality, you're just not going to be happy. You're not going to like it. You're not going to like yourself because you're cutting off half of what you are, or more than half of what you actually are. Don't feel like you have to be this version of yourself that's normal. You can be weird. You can be interesting, different, strange. You can like whatever you like, weird stuff. You can do whatever you want to do. You can wear a funny hat, do random shit. You can do all sorts. It doesn't really matter. So, the last thing you want to be is normal, I think, in the grand scheme of things. I keep saying the grand scheme of things. I think just be you. And if you is weird and not normal, then that's good and fine. And you should be that. Bye.